Miles, give us a thumbs up. We're good? We're good. What's up, everybody? This is Nothing Explained. I'm Samson. I'm joined by Ryan Fu.
Hello.
As usual.
Mm-hmm.
And my good friend Bethany Moore.
Hello.
A.k.a. Pete Nick Betty. And she is a cannabis industry expert. So we're doing Cannabis 2.0 essentially, although there's, it's not really Cannabis 2.0, it's more of a much more segregated bit of the information.
That's okay. If you don't know anything about cannabis, check out the previous podcast and then come back and watch this one.
Perfect, yeah. So, as usual, this being Nothing Explained, I will, in the course of this podcast, explain absolutely nothing. And as a consequence of that, nothing I say or anything we say is legal advice, or medical advice, or financial advice. None of those are all regulated industries, and we do not have a license to offer advice within those realms. Yes. So,
do you offer any advice, Samson?
Well, I can offer advice, and you can take my advice, but it is not legal.
Okay.
Yeah, so suggestions, opinions. Yeah, like my opinion and $2 will get you a cup of coffee at the local convenience store.
Nice.
So Bethany is a lobbyist in the cannabis industry, and at the state level, correct?
Actually, my organization lobbies at the federal level.
Oh, even better.
Yep. I don't do any lobbying myself. I'm in the communications department, but we do have 3 folks in D.C. that work full-time for NCIA, National Cannabis Industry Association.
Nice.
It's a great organization, been around 7 years now. We have members of our organization, like any other industry, association, bankers, bricklayers, whatever. We have companies that are members of our association, and what we do is provide education, community, and lobbying. Congress in D.C., knocking on those doors, talking to senators and representatives, some friendly on the issue, some not so much.
Of course.
So as a kind of a little introduction to the subject, sell us on cannabis. What are some of the amazing things why should cannabis be legal, or why is it okay that it is?
Okay, legalization in Colorado and Washington for adults rolled out in 2014, as we know, and have enjoyed. And this was big as a cannabis activist that's been involved as medical advocacy, mostly in the state of Maryland, where I'm from. I didn't even see medical being a nationwide thing and for years to come. So it's really exciting that adults have the opportunity to make a choice of what they want to put in their bodies, whether it's, hey, look at this, 21 plus. And it's more dangerous than cannabis. That's one of the ways that we were able to win here in Colorado through the SAFER campaign, just educating like, hey, this is actually kind of more dangerous than cannabis.
Quite a bit, much more so.
Yeah.
Statistically, definitely.
So, in addition, we've got more research coming out allowing us to see what the actual medical benefits of consuming cannabis are. Whether you're smoking it or taking it as an edible, people are able to use this for pain treatment first and foremost, and they're able to get off of very hard opiates, the Vicodin and Oxycontins that are being prescribed.
Yep.
Those are hard to get off of if you become reliant.
And the only other option right now is methadone, which is not as friendly as cannabis.
Not quite.
Right.
Not quite.
The idea that cannabis is still a Schedule I drug on the Controlled Substances Act list is mind-blowing. Absolutely. It means that has no medical value. We know differently now. We have to break through decades of negative stigmas surrounding the marijuana plant,
right.
For sure. And then there's social repercussions. The minorities are the most affected when it comes to prohibition. You are more likely to have drug charges, get pulled over, and have this ruin your life. So now that we've taken that off the plate, where if you're over 21 and consuming it responsibly, you won't be losing your life or losing your scholarship or going to jail or whatever the laws are in that state. So this is fantastic. The impact is just freedom. I think so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So at I want to know what kind of resistance, like. To what extent are you as an organization moving into situations and finding that lubricated ahead? Like, how often are you finding people who are already a little bit educated versus people who are still just so in the dark about what marijuana actually is?
Well, I've been working officially with NCIA for about 3.5 years, and just in that time, I have seen the conversation elevate among more than just young people and hippies. There are, for lack of a better phrase, soccer moms and doctors and elderly folks and veterans. Mm-hmm. There are people of all walks of life who are using it now. So that's allowing us an opportunity to have a conversation with groups of people that maybe were just, focused on the stigma first. And once we take that away and educate them, everybody's talking about it now. Yeah. I think it's even if you are a conservative Republican, you probably know somebody who has benefited from the use of cannabis.
Yeah. Well, it's a very, very ancient herbal medicine, something that the Chinese have been using for 3,000 years. So
smart.
Imagine that it's got to have some positive benefits medically. Tell us, what are some of those?
I mentioned pain earlier. I mean, that's a big one. So there's also studies that are showing that the compounds are effective in helping heal cancer or prevent cancer. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. For those who have trouble sleeping, often an edible or a tincture is a really great option to get yourself ready for sleep instead of knocking back an Ambien or, nothing wrong with wine. But, some people medicate in different ways just to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's not like, as someone who doesn't deal with that as a personal issue, it's interesting to hear that is actually, there's a huge market for that, right? To think about how many little butterflies I've seen on advertising campaigns to get folks to go to sleep, it's kind of mind-boggling to me.
And then you sleepwalk and open the fridge, and what are the Ambien stories?
Yeah.
And Ambien, what is it that there's a major warning against Ambien? Like, one thing you're not supposed to do because of I want to say psychoactive, but like the mentally active aspects of Ambien, like there's some sort of thing you're not supposed to mix with it because you will have just like the most nuts experiences on it.
Yeah. Must be alcohol. Who knows?
Well, I know there's definitely alcohol, but I believe it's caffeine. I think that if you drink caffeine and you also have an Ambien, that you're going to trip balls. Because my understanding is, with just having known a couple of drug addict people in my life, that any of those drugs that are supposed to put you to sleep, if you can stay awake through the first, where it's supposed to knock you out, you essentially live life as a vivid, lucid dream.
Oh.
Yeah, so you trip balls.
Dreaming awake. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
That's scary, yeah.
So what are you guys working on at the federal level right now? Like, what is the current project?
Well, keeping legalization afloat and allowing the businesses that are providing cannabis, either growing it, selling it, making tinctures, brownies, cookies, whatever you like. Mm-hmm. I mean, as well as all the other companies that support. There's so many ancillary businesses, software, point of sale systems, marketing, accounting, lawyer, everything.
Medical documentation systems, keep people's information safe.
Everything. Security. There are so many aspects to the cannabis industry beyond just growing it, selling it, and consuming it. Mm-hmm. So showing members of Congress and the world that, one, we're responsible, legitimate business owners, and we deserve to be treated just like every other American industry. We follow the rules, we're compliant. The rules and regulations constantly change, and we constantly have to keep up on that as well, so it's challenging. So that's kind of a broader philosophy there of our mission. As far as the more policy-focused aspects, banking, access to banking for these businesses is huge.
Yeah, that's a big one. Is that to what extent? Where are we at in that issue?
We have some banks that choose to give accounts to specific businesses, and often it's based on maybe you had a previous relationship with that bank through other businesses or your mortgage. So if they know you and trust you, maybe they will give you an account, but they will probably charge you an exorbitant fee. these banks have to file what's called a SAR, a suspicious activity report, regularly because they're knowingly doing business with a company that is violating federal law still. I mean, it may be legal in the state, but states' rights and federal is an interesting...
So if you're like a credit union, like a state credit union, do the same federal laws, is the same liability there for violating federal law?
I believe so. It's just a different kind of regulatory body that looks over that. Credit unions tend to be a little more loose, which I've heard folks having success with certain credit unions. But, I mean, some regional manager of your bank could come in one day and be like, what's that? Shut them down.
Yeah.
And then you get a letter and, you know, you have 24 hours to get your money out.
Yeah. If even that, I mean, technically it would be legal to seize it. So if you wanted to, I mean...
Asset forfeiture.
Obviously that bank would immediately be taking that to the federal level in the court because that's where that issue would happen. But
yeah, the banks don't want to be held liable for, you know, aiding in an illegal activity.
Well, the part of the bank model, too, is to avoid liability and increase, you know, the value of assets. So... they're sort of in the business of that.
Right.
So would you say you and your peers, is your focus on trying to like loosen up legislation, create legislation that is opening up cannabis at a federal level, or are you just trying to stop them from cracking down on the states?
The focus of my organization, NCIA, kind of works hand in hand with this other organization that's been around for over 20 years called Marijuana Policy Project, MPP.
I get emails from them.
They're great. I've been a subscriber for many years, reading up on the work they do and making donations when I can. They are the ones that you'll see typically going into the states and running the ballot initiatives to change the laws in the first place. Yeah. Once those laws get changed and an industry starts to establish, that's kind of where my organization comes in. We represent the business owners. So we facilitate the connection between the cannabis industry and members of Congress and having that conversation. We have an annual Lobby Days event in D.C., although our 3 staffers are there year-round, full-time. Getting the actual business owners, the members, like if you own a dispensary, come to D.C., sit down and talk with your senator and be like, hi, look at the whites of my eyes. I like to play tennis. These are my concerns. They need to get to know you. They want to know you're a real human being. It's important to have those conversations.
Yeah. So what is the effects of lobbying on policy? Because I know lobbying doesn't look too different industry to industry, but it certainly changes a little bit. You've got sort of sitting down and having nice dinners with people to hosting fundraising events for people's campaigns. Yes. What are the other kinds of things lobbyists do?
Having a lot of conversations with the staffers, with the members of Congress themselves, providing them information, showing up to their events, making sure they see us and know we're here and we're available if an issue comes up in their state or district. We're a resource for them, first and foremost. So getting an opportunity, like I said, just to have that look at the whites of your eyes conversation, so they know you're real and they feel safe talking to you and asking questions. Really gets a lot of education. We are really educating the public and members of Congress.
Which is important for them because if they're going to go and fight for a bill and say this has to be that, then another congressman stands up and says, but that leads to heroin addiction. They can say, no. We've got all these studies that show that actually that's not the case.
Yeah, right. Not true. Which I just like, I'm sitting here, we're having this conversation, and as far as I would really enjoy seeing the whites of my congressman's eyes, or any congressman, and have them repeat some rhetoric and to be like, that's actually not true, and it never was. Not even once. So.
Yeah, that's part of politics, though.
Yeah, it's amazing. The disinformation campaign against cannabis was incredible.
Yeah, and it's not over. I mean,
that's very true.
There's an incredible amount of disinformation. I just saw, I think it was Jared Polis over in Congress, and someone from Louisiana, I think, was railing against him, saying, like, stating some quote-unquote facts where he said, the crime rate has gone up in Colorado because of marijuana, and more teens are smoking, and this and that. And Jared was like, what? None of that's true.
Yeah.
Like,
the crime rate is up a little bit in the last 2 years. There's no evidence.
It's not drug-related.
No, there's no
population-related.
Well, and there are financial issues, and, like, crime is a very complicated thing. You can't directly tie it to drugs. You can't directly tie it to one drug. And pick a little passion about that because I got into a little fight in Facebook this week about the whole situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, somebody just posted this, like, it was an op-ed in the New York Times, and it was, how people want to tackle an issue, and then they do 3 paragraphs, and then a bunch of people repost it. I'm like, you guys, this doesn't even tackle the issue. It's just some guy who's like, I think this.
Yeah, it doesn't even tap the issue on the shoulder.
Yeah, and then there was a little bit of like back and forth, and somebody was like, well, I just found like counter examples to the crime rate in Colorado, and so I guess we don't really have any idea what's really going on. But the arrests are up in youth minorities because the cops, now having way less to do, are focusing on their primary focus, which is the downtrodden and making their lives worse.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yes,
other statistical indicators, like they say that marijuana DUIs are up, but it's not something that cops were really looking for before. It's not something they ever tracked statistically either. So
where are they basing that from?
It's not up or down. It's just new information. So it's too early to tell with so much of this stuff, but there are certain things that are definitely for sure, which is that like alcohol deaths are down, alcohol DUIs are down. There's other
opioid addiction is way down.
Opioid addiction is way down in any state that's done any medical marijuana work, and that's got an obvious causal relationship too to, like you mentioned before, all the OxyContin and other forms of opiates that folks use for pain relief and get super extra addicted to.
Super dangerous. And how interesting that Trump, even I think yesterday, tweeted out something about opioid addiction as this major problem that we really need to tackle.
He declared a state of emergency for it.
Yeah, and his Secretary of General, Sessions, is like super anti-marijuana. So like here he is like on completely opposite sides of the fence there. So
how's that affecting you guys as a lobbying organization with the Sessions and Trump and this whole push against marijuana and just having a Republican House and Congress?
Well, with Attorney General Sessions in place, he definitely has some interesting perspectives. His mindset seems to be from the 1950s in so many ways, and
because he's from the 1950s,
right? He's so behind the times, and seems to be clinging to these sort of racist views, I think, because cannabis prohibition has been used in the past, and that's come out factually. It was a way to target minorities and
social justice leaders, all kinds of stuff.
Right. So he is still in that mindset. We have a lot of educating to do of Attorney General Sessions if he sticks around. And he was touting incorrect facts about marijuana recently as well, and he seems very shocked that so many people in America support cannabis legalization.
Yeah.
He's had some back and forth tete-a-tetes with governors and members of Congress telling them, your laws are horrible, roll them back. And we actually have some great people in Congress and governors that wrote back and said, no, things are working here. Come check it out, but we're not changing. So.
I think you just need to get him high. I think you just need to bring Sessions in and just roll him a joint and sit him down and say, look, buddy, this is the time.
I've seen some, I read an article, I think it was late last week, that something suggesting that there's some evidence out there that he's kind of alone in his opinions, and because he sits above as the person who decides whether or not you're going to prosecute a law, he then, it's kind of like in the same way a cop, goes out and witnesses a crime and arrests the person, and then he delivers all of that information to the attorney, who then decides if there's enough information to prosecute, right? So at the federal level, he is the top lawyer in the country who decides who we're going to go after.
He's the number one prosecutor.
Yeah, and he's more I see this industry doing something bad. So in the way of cannabis, he's we got to crack down on this crime being committed, and all of the agencies underneath him are we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fine. Go after the criminal market. Maybe focus on, drugs that actually are extremely harmful to people in society. Leave cannabis alone. That being said, there's 2 documents that previous attorney generals released and shared called the Ogden Memo, and there's the Cole Memo also. What that did was laid down the roadmap of how to balance this federal-state inequality. I like to call it the 8 easy steps. Don't sell to minors, don't be involved in cartels, don't sell across state lines. There's just kind of
common... Don't be involved in cartels.
Really common sense, kind of like, here's how to do this and stay in your lane, and not really, if you follow these 8 easy steps, will not use taxpayer money in the Department of Justice to come shut you down.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful. But then again, this is just a memo. It's just a piece of paper. It's not...
It still sets a precedent, though.
It's not actual legislation, but exactly. It sets a precedent. It sets the conversation. It sets the intention of how previous attorney generals, or that department basically, wants to handle this situation for the time being. So that's allowed more and more states to jump on board in the last couple of years.
So how close is Sessions to getting his dream realized? Is he very far away? Does he have the power to step in tomorrow?
I don't think he has a fucking chance in hell, to be perfectly honest.
That's how I feel.
Toothpaste is not going back in the tube. Not. This freedom has burst forth, and we're not going away. There's too much money in the industry. I mean, we're losing a lot of it in taxes. That's another thing we lobby for, by the way. Section 280E of the IRS tax code doesn't allow these businesses to take normal business tax deductions. So payroll, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a giant amount of tax.
So instead of being a business owner paying like 20-30% taxes, cannabis businesses are paying 70, 80+% taxes. And if they don't have banking, they're just bringing a bag of cash to the IRS, and they don't like that either.
Most cannabis industries deal heavily in cash.
Right, which is a safety issue for the workers and
for everything. It's just sort of silly that that's even still a concern. It's been 7 years of this, 6 years of this. We should be over that by now, but I guess not. Right. So how many states have legalized or gotten close?
Oh boy, we have a map on our website that can show you the states that are adult use and medical, as well as states that are medical only. And then there's a couple of these oddball states that are limited, like CBD only, or concentrates only, or... so those are kind of gray area, but... That's
good, though. CBD has got such obvious, remarkable medical effects that it should definitely be legal.
I love it. I like a good 2-to-1 CBD-THC balance. It's really good for me. It's a really good healing combination for a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, how many states? Just a guess if it's an impossible.
We're at about half, so...
That's tight.
Yeah, it's incredible. And if you go to www.thecannabisindustry.org. Underneath the tab resources, there's a link to our state marijuana policies map, is what it's called. And it's interactive, actually. You can click on it, and it's color-coded. And when you get into each state, you can look at a basic overview of the laws and regulations, how many licenses were issued, how much the economic impact was in the last year, as well as a projection for 5 years from now. A lot of really cool information there.
Yeah.
So the visual, even though there's some really big states in the middle of our beloved United States that take up a lot of space on the map that haven't yet... we're talking North Dakota, South Dakota.
Not necessarily population dense.
Sure, but they look visually big on the map. But if you look at where the actual populations are and you look at our map, it's like, wow, we're really moving across.
You're saying, well, more than half the land in the United States, it's not legal to smoke cannabis, but more than half than people in this country can legally smoke cannabis.
Said it better than I did, yes.
Well said. Way to explain nothing.
Right?
Yeah, well done.
What I'm kind of curious, one of the interesting things I've come across in this whole subject is the way that states are choosing to legalize cannabis. And, like, for instance, Colorado, we put it on our constitution, giving it basically an unalienable right to access to cannabis. But then our legislator has chosen to, like, write a whole bunch of laws which are probably running counter to the access option of it. But then you have states, and I'm thinking like Illinois for some reason is ringing out in my head very recently, who came forward with a legalization or a medical legalization in which basically was like, we're going to hand out 4 licenses, and they're just creating a marijuana monopoly in their state. And it's not, we're not creating an industry, we're just creating a door for a couple of our friends to be able to start.
Sounds like communism. That's a joke. But it
it
sounds like
is,
a certain kind of communism, state-controlled business.
Yeah. And I always like that word is misused. Like we've never actually tried communism on this planet yet. So
yeah, we should have a podcast about what actual communism is.
And socialism,
but
and all those things.
That's a good example of what state-controlled business.
We don't even have a democracy. Everyone wants to try and tell us we have a democracy. We're not even close.
No. Do we have a plutocracy? Meritocracy?
We certainly
it's definitely not a meritocracy.
No, we've got there's plutocratic morals, but I think technically we are a democratic republic, right? We're a republic that's...
Yeah, but I mean, like, the decisions aren't being made by the people or our representatives. They're being made by the money meme, in my opinion. Like,
it's a representative democratic republic. So you are not voting on the actual laws in the republic. You're voting on the people who will vote on the laws of the republic.
That's true.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But even then, when you vote a person into Congress, you didn't just vote someone off the street. You voted someone who's been entrenched into politics in a long time, and you've voted in someone who has there is a backdoor access to that person, which the influence that's happening to the person that you elected has much more to do with that backdoor access than it has to do with you, the voting public,
But you don't just vote with that vote, too. You also vote with how you spend your money. So I would say in another way that...
Yeah, much more importantly,
I would say that's actually more powerful than even maybe the backdoor access that you get to a politician with money, is the way that the overall consuming base spends its money, because that's the real vote. The governors and politicians, like you said, with the industry, they have to follow the money. They have to support successful industries that build jobs, that create infrastructure. All this stuff is something that it's like built into the fabric of the American dream, right? That like we have to do what's successful. So I think that's part of it too.
Money talks, tax revenues talk too.
That is the big buzzword, but like... hidden in that is the weight that has been lifted, and we touched on it earlier, of the judicial system has been like crushing anyone involved with cannabis, which has weighed more heavily on minorities by a long shot, which was clearly intentional, as stated by the perpetrators.
And stats. I mean, I believe you're gonna have to look this one up, but I am rather sure that actually if you look at like the race breakdown of who gets caught with marijuana, and then you look at who gets charged for marijuana, it's just totally disparaging.
It is.
Yeah. So it means that if a white guy comes into a courtroom with a marijuana charge, he's way less likely to get convicted than a black guy or a Latino guy. That's unacceptable for that to be the case. And cannabis is just one example, but it paints that picture so clearly that I'm glad to see people are rallying behind it a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, I do love cannabis for its laying bare, basically, the primary issue we've had in this country, which is the disinformation campaign around many, many subjects, and then the money that is backing that up.
Yeah.
Because you can say, I had a big, my uncle is, pretty standard conservative, made money. I mean, he's a holistic person. There's nothing, he doesn't have a bad bone in his body, but then it's the information situation, and my comment to him after this big back and forth, which kind of shut the conversation down, but I was like, you're a free market guy, right? There was never any scientific evidence to suggest that there was anything wrong with cannabis, in terms of the things we have at our disposal, alcohol, pills.
How about sugar?
Yeah, all this stuff we have access to that is far more dangerous and it's been clear from the get-go. If it was truly a free market, how did this not succeed? How has the market not embraced this very awesome thing, So where is your free market now?
Yeah, it's being controlled by the government.
A lot of conspiracies to consider around that one for sure.
Yeah, totally. But that's why I'm saying is that it was made illegal on a bunch of propaganda, not science. They said there was science, but there never was any science behind it whatsoever. And so, how does that happen in this free country, in this bastion of amazing freedom that you've grown up in? All these people you've come to trust and all these, news media. Yeah. Where were they?
Well, it just concerns me that, if people are really so gung-ho about protecting the health of other folks, then how is marijuana your target? If you're really trying to reduce, if really what you cared about was the quality of life that people had and how long they lived and how healthy their children were, then there are so many things in this country that you could go after that are not marijuana, like from pollution to sugar to
way
the way that
better
we create,
battles to be fought.
Yeah, enriched flour. There's so many different things. I mean, we used to spray our children with DDT smoke.
Oh, yeah.
To think about like how, and the government put out ads that was like, tell your children to run in the smoke so that they don't get infected with bugs. Like, clearly, that's not their real prerogative. They're not here to protect us. And if that's what you think, like, no judgment on you, but I just don't see facts that bear any other truth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why marijuana is great, because it opens that subject matter up.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying like where our country is going. Because not only is everyone going to have access to marijuana, hey, that's a great thing we've all just put on the table, but you just talk about, that's 300 million people in this country, of which, I mean, marijuana has always been very popular. That's another stigma that people need to get used to. You know, like Eminem, marijuana was everywhere. Where was you brought up?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so like, let's say 20% of the people already knew there's no big deal about marijuana or whatever. Even if at the most base level, I'm going to be at home fucked up on marijuana all weekend. Like, whatever. He's still at home, not doing anything really bad, you know?
Yeah.
And most of the crime is being committed on hard drugs and alcohol. Like alcohol's
more like all of it.
Yeah, alcohol's more the incidental crime. Like, I've lowered my inhibition, so I'm going to go out and like run over fences and you know, just like do stupid stuff. And it's
probably not so different for crack, though. I assume that like, the inhibitions are just through the windows. You're like, I want that thing, I'm taking it.
Yeah, but then all your major crime comes in from your addicts who are trying to generate funds for their next fix, and then all of the dealers who are trying to control zones.
Yeah,
you know, and like that's where the gang issue comes from. And then you get into all the stuff of where it is now absolutely clear that the government created the crack epidemic in all of the ghettos of the United States, and
on purpose.
Yeah, and promoted all of that, the negative promotion of the imagery of why we all grew up like afraid of gangsters.
Yeah, and also all those people were lobbied by the prison industry. Yeah, they needed more prisoners.
Who is the big loser?
Yeah, that's the real industry that you're lobbying again. Maybe not directly, but the truth is that the more that drug-related crimes can be reduced, and the more the sentencing can be reduced, the less slaves they're going to have to make their genes to sell to China. That's
Which
the
is
underlying
such a weird thing to say.
It's true. It's true. They've got a brand called the Prison Blues.
Oh my goodness!
That they sell to China. That's denim jeans. You get paid 1 cent an hour. That's slavery.
Yeah, I mean,
it's actually indentured servitude.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my.
The slavery is actually, in legal terms, it is not. Like the slaves of the South, that's indentured servitude. Slavery is actually kind of like a debt repayment program legally on the books. So.
Oh, interesting. Well, there might be some way in between where it's like you're repaying your debt to society, but you can take a mortgage out on your debt and we'll pay you for cigarettes in prison, things like that.
But it is a horrible, horrible situation. But I want to get into that. Like, what evidence are you seeing of the alcohol industry? I know is pushing back against marijuana legalization, and I'm sure the prison industry is in there somewhere. I haven't seen any like surface level education of that, but where are you getting resistance?
I don't work in our government relations department, so their insight would probably be a bit more in depth than mine.
Good political answer.
My diplomacy skills get better and better all the time. But I mean, from what I understand, Attorney General Sessions is a private prison guy.
Well, yeah. Of course he is.
So that's a little nerve-wracking.
He seems like a slave owner to me. It pushes the policy that I'm no longer interested in mincing my words when it comes to what you're supporting. Right. If you're supporting putting people of color in prisons at a higher rate for non-violent drug offenses and then making money off of their labor, that's pro-slavery.
Exploitation, minimum exploitation.
Yeah, and at worst slavery, Yes. So anyway, where do you encounter the resistance, though?
Well, there's one, I think it's called the SMART campaign. There's one campaign run by a prohibitionist named Kevin Sabet. He is the most outspoken that I've seen. And just misinformation, the sky's falling, crime, everything horrible.
Marijuana makes you gay.
That explains so much.
It's true, though. They say crazy stuff, right?
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, I have taken a probability and statistics course before. And what I learned from that course is if you fashion the data in any way, you can pretty much almost prove and skew anything you want.
Which is called p-hacking.
What?
It's called P hacking.
Yeah, P is like when you do a scientific study, you go back and you analyze the data, and the output, the number you get out is P, and there's a P value, and it basically says like if you have, let's say you have 2 people, and you say, have you experienced, or let's say you have 5 people, and you say, have you experienced the benefits of marijuana, and 2 people say no and 3 people say yes, then you take those 2 people and you say, I did a study and 100% of the people had negative effects of cannabis, but you're ignoring the actual. Right. So, right? But then there is a mathematical equation that a statistician would go back in and analyze your data, because that's not right. You can hide that in a study of thousands and thousands of people.
Exactly.
So there's a way to go back in and
you can throw out the lower and upper and improve whatever data you want.
When you're doing a study, you would analyze your own data and you'd say, I came out with a P value of this, and so right there at the top of your study, you'd say my data seems pretty clean and my P value came out this. So in order to hide your data inside that, you have to have a clean P to come out the end.
Clean P,
right? It's so appropriate for the marijuana conversation.
I think so.
But that's called P hacking, and it's an epidemic. Honestly,
especially in the science world. But another issue,
especially medications,
is that they're not required to put out every study that they release. I mean, these are companies that have billions and billions of dollars. They have no problem doing 100,000 studies. And then the one study whose statistical skew matches what they want, they'll take. The 999 that they don't want, they throw away. And no one ever hears about it.
Yeah. Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and you as a scientist would know what they're hoping you're going to find.
Right. So you're skewing the questions.
Yeah, and you might think, you have a couple of things that could happen, but the scientist could come in with the mindset that they're going to find a certain thing. And when they start finding something to the opposite, their bias will lead them to be like, I must be doing something in my science wrong, so that's going to skew them. Ooh. Then you also have the people who are, they realize the data is going in the other direction, and they know that their funding is going to get pulled as soon as they publish, so they either don't like you have your minority of people who are going to say, it didn't work out, so whatever, and then the people who want the certain kind of data, like, well, we're going to go find someone else who can find us the data we want. Right. So, but in order, that person's like, well, okay, I can get paid for this study, but if I want to get paid for a second study, I'm going to have to figure out, if I'm going to put food on the table,
how to get the statistics to say what I want them to say.
I need it to look like something else.
It's a sick, sad world.
And then on the other hand of things, you find that it's very easy to get your scientific study published in a bullshit magazine, and then it is very easy to put out a press release, and the media will pick up and run with it, especially if it has, clickbait value, where the big one last year was a bunch of guys
journalism.
A bunch of guys did a fake study where the chocolate will help you lose weight, and it blew up online.
Media took it all over.
Blew up, like went
they
super
did it on purpose,
viral.
Though, right?
Yeah, totally on purpose.
Good for them.
Point?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then my favorite thing from the last year is the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, basically the preeminent journal in the Western United States, is on record as saying that he thinks at least half of all science is bullshit, like published science. Like people are always like, there's a sign right outside the alley in that house. Remember I pointed to last week that says science is real.
Yeah.
And that's like people like they pick up the newspaper and it says, new study says this, and like that's not technically science. That's a news article that may or may not have a whole bunch of issues.
Yeah, commenting on a study that may or may not be what you're calling science.
Yeah, totally. So science is really the individual assessment of reality. You yourself need to go out and read 100 studies. You don't need to read you read a bunch of
news articles.
News articles. I mean, that's better than nothing, obviously. But you should also go out and read a bunch of studies.
Well, I mean, if you've taken a crack, first off, people don't have that kind of time. Yeah. I wish we had the kind of luxury. Like if we actually shared our stuff a little bit and worked, 4 days a week instead of 5, maybe people would have a little bit more time to do that kind of stuff.
That is a perfectly good thing.
Cliff Notes.
Yeah, but one thing that you can do is just read. There are 2 articles at the beginning and end of every study, which is like the beginning is like an intro. It's
called the abstract.
The abstract is like their intention and what they're trying to get and what they think about when they're going into it. And then the final piece is the summary. There's another word for it that's not summary, but
conclusion.
Yeah, it's a conclusion, and it's and if you just read both of those, you get do that for like 2 or 3 studies at anything you're interested in. If you don't know about vaccines or marijuana or alcohol or heroin or opiate addiction, go and look at those, find 3 different studies from different sources, just read those 2 pages.
Skim the middle and just focus on the objective and conclusion.
It'll be very clear to you what the bias of that study is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like reading 2 news articles from Fox and CNN. You're like, oh, these people have different intentions. Like, you figure that out pretty quick. So I hope, I mean, the thing that also blows my mind is, wouldn't that be a good thing to teach in school? Like, if we wanted people wanted to have an educated citizenry, God, that would be nice.
Yeah, statistics is pretty high up. I dated a woman who's it's like her favorite thing, statistics teaching. But she teaches high school, and the chances of getting into you have to have an algebra background. So most people are barely getting into algebra just before they graduate. Class. So if you took algebra before you were a junior,
man, Japan scoffs at us. Their 15-year-olds are crushing us in those kinds of sectors.
Oh, yeah, we're like 38th in world education.
Yeah.
We are,
and we barely know English.
We're pretty much, that's true.
That's a good point.
We are pretty much, as far as developed world, first world countries, we are dead last.
Yeah, we're definitely low on the totem pole. Yeah. But there's a reason for that.
How things have changed. So speaking of getting back on the track with marijuana and tying in scientific studies, one of my favorites, it was coming in around the legalization issue and SAFER, which I will point out that they did... I don't remember the year, but they did have a failed campaign where they came close, like 48% of the vote, and they almost didn't do it, and then they managed to push it through on the next one 2 years later. But there was a big landmark study around that time when we legalized marijuana about people young. They just tested a bunch of college kids, and people who smoke marijuana and binge drink have far less negative effects from the binge drinking. There's like a protective effect with regard to mental stability and the actual physical condition of your neurons in your brain when you are smoking marijuana.
Although combining those two as a general practice, I wouldn't recommend.
Of course not.
But I believe that. I believe it has healing properties and has so many applications that we haven't even explored. And if I could go on a quick tangent, one of the studies that I read several years ago, probably like 10 years ago. It was like Italian and British scientists, not in the U.S., of course, unfortunately, but they did a study on, they took like 12 different strains of cannabis, and you guys know what MRSA is, the methicillin-resistant staphylococcus, or the superbug?
Oh, superbug, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I actually had that 10 years ago. I got bit by a spider, and it gave me MRSA.
Damn.
Ooh, that's another tangent, but...
Man, talk about reverse. Instead of superpowers, you get a superbug.
Yeah, so got bit by a spider. It was brown recluse. Also gave me MRSA. Can't get that month and a half of my life back. But that being said, I'm still here.
Did you trip, literally? Like at any point were you just like deliriously like...
I was sick with fever. Like it was awful. I thought I was dying. Like my life flashed before my eyes, and I had IV infusions of antibiotics for like 15 days and surgery.
Gotcha.
Anyway, right around that time, I happened to read a study from these European scientists that there are 12 different strains of marijuana against 12 different types of MRSA, and it was 100% effective. It kills it. This is a whole new application that no one's even talking about yet, and I'm just like waiting for everybody to catch up on.
Did you do that yourself? Did you consume marijuana when you had MRSA?
I've been consuming cannabis since my freshman year of college, so 17 years. And I mean, this was 2008. So I lived in Maryland. So I was getting my cannabis from the underground market rather than a regulated one. But I'm just smoking. I consume every day and have. So, but I didn't have like topicals, which I think would have been helpful. I don't know.
Not the same kind of CBD research was out? Or?
None of that, right. I mean, you just smoke whatever is in the guy's backpack, right? Like, that's what you're getting. So, and now there are certain strains with certain compounds and terpenes and where you can target certain, antibacterial or, sleep or, there's things you can actually engineer based on what your needs are.
Yeah.
So I just think that's completely fascinating that in the lab it was 100% effective at killing MRSA, which has killed football players and babies and almost a beatnik.
Yeah. Well, it didn't kill the beatnik.
You beat it back.
That's the whole point.
Don't sleep with spiders.
No, is that how you got it? You're sleeping. It just bit you while you were sleeping, or what?
It did. I saw it the night before as I was going to bed, crawling on the floor. I lived in one of these lovely old Tacoma Park houses, and I saw it crawling, and I'm doing my good Buddha Wicca at one with nature moment, like, hello, spider, I'm going to give you your space, and I honor you.
And God slapped you with a spider bite.
And then I learned a very interesting lesson about the nature of nature.
Yeah.
And if a spider's in my house, sorry, I win. If it's in nature, I'll let it be. So, but yeah.
I remove every spider. Well, not every spider. Occasionally I'll see a nice spider, but mostly I remove them. Yeah, get them out of here.
What do you, given that, kind of, you were taking the holistic approach to the spider, I won't bug you and you won't bug me, and yet it did. Mm-hmm. What came of that? What lesson did you learn? Do you feel like that was something that needed to happen for you to, be who you are?
Oh, definitely part of my spiritual journey and mental journey. I think I actually had some personality changes take place around that time.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got much more reserved and into my head, and a little bit more irritable, actually. I'd experienced so much over the course of a month and a half, from being bit to recovering from having an infection scooped out of my body, and 15 days of that was a lot. It was a lot. I definitely was changed a bit by the experience, and the lesson is to not be a fool, and to nature is nature. A tiger is a tiger, a spider is a spider, and that's their nature, and that's how they're going to act. So to expect anything less is foolish.
Definitely.
Well, how interesting that you learned about the benefits of cannabis against the superbug. And here you are with a career in cannabis, and you're on the podcast talking about cannabis.
Yeah.
And you're that spider bite could have brought you here.
Yeah.
So we got 15 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about if people want to support cannabis legislation, what can they do? How are you guys accepting help? How should they engage with their legislators? Should they want to get the word out? That kind of thing. Who can they tweet?
Sure. If you're a average consumer or citizen, and you're living in a state that does not have a cannabis program, I would certainly look for some of the local groups to see if there's a ballot initiative being planned. Contact the national office at places like Marijuana Policy Project, Americans for Safe Access, NORML, all those groups. If you're in a state that does have medical or adult use, it would be great for you to be a responsible user, consumer.
Know your stuff. Know what's going into your body, and that's not just marijuana.
Be educated, be polite, consider etiquette. I mean, we're working through the social use campaign. It's not going well here in Denver. So, I mean, getting involved, making donations to those organizations that are putting up ballot initiatives, go volunteer to collect signatures. There's a lot of ways to help on the ground. If you are a business owner in the cannabis space, if you're not already a member of NCIA, you must log on to thecannabisindustry.org and join and get involved. We have over 1,400 companies now that are members of NCIA. Cool. Imagine how many employees that represents. So when we talk to members of Congress or the mainstream media, these numbers are important. So get involved, and through us, we can help you. If you've never had a conversation with your congressperson or state police chief or whomever, go make a relationship with them. Introduce yourself. Tell them, what your thoughts are, and don't hide from your congressman, and create an open dialogue so that they trust and know that you are a responsible cannabis business owner. If you've got a lot of money, NCIA does have a PAC, and you can contact us for more information, and that's all I'm legally able to say about our PAC.
Wait, do the acronym there, PAC.
Political Action Committee.
All right.
It's the vehicle by which...
Super PAC thing.
Yeah, we hear Super PAC on the news constantly.
Super PAC is, it has less rules and regulations surrounding it. It would allow people to make more kinds of donations and
more anonymous donations.
Yeah, so we're just a regular PAC, good old fashioned PAC,
where you can track people's donations and so forth.
And it has to, there's all kinds of rules surrounding how PACs work and how raising money for political candidates works.
But that's the good, genuine way to go about it. So I'm glad to hear that.
For sure. Yeah, we have definitely given money to members of Congress who are our champions, who go and fight for us in Congress and sponsor legislation, co-sponsor legislation. Yeah, we definitely have relationships with their offices, and the PAC is one way that we can do that.
Very interesting.
Money. I know it's the dirty side.
Who can we shout out, maybe at the legislative level, people, actual legislators and stuff who are, giving it their all on this subject matter?
Sure.
We mentioned Jared Polis.
Yeah. Representative Jared Polis is actually running for governor in Colorado. I was just at his fundraiser earlier this last week. So that's a pro-cannabis candidate running for governor.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We would be the first homosexual governor. Not that matters.
That's excellent.
No, that's still fantastic.
He is facing some resistance, so I think it's important to note that, if you support diversity and stuff, that's a really good way.
Yeah.
And I've met him a couple times. I've hosted a couple fundraisers at my restaurant back in the day, and I really like the guy, got to be honest.
Yeah, I met him once too. He didn't seem like a politician, which is always a good sign for me.
Sure.
You don't seem like a politician. What are you hiding?
Hey, there are some gems in Congress.
Yeah, who else?
One of my favorite members of Congress is from Portland, Oregon, Congressman Earl Blumenauer. Mm-hmm. He's great. I mean, just such a great guy. I've definitely been part of NCIA hosted fundraisers for him and participated in others as well. And he's had several cannabis-only fundraisers, the whole event is just cannabis business owners, and he loves us. He's great. They just don't make them like him anymore. So Congressman Earl Blumenauer is fantastic. We love him. In California, Dana Rohrabacher is also, he's a Republican congressman for sure, which is great that we have bipartisan support. But he's a libertarian, so he's in California, so
not your everyday Republican,
right? Aside from that, I mean, we have. I have a list on the website, and
that's okay.
there's a lot of folks actually. So if you see your representative on our list on our website, if you choose to go check it out, hey, send them an email saying thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that goes a long way, too. Send a phone call. Hey, thank you. Just saying.
Yeah, not
complaining.
Yeah, rather than the harassment style of I can't believe you're voting for this or whatever. Be hey, man, I really appreciate that. Keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm. Also, because the people who get those emails are just staffers. They're not the actual politicians. So give those staffers a nice day. Also include in the email, thanks for doing your job and reading what is mostly negative stuff. And in the midst of that, hope you're having a good day, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, the members of Congress rely on their staffers to keep them up to date and educated, right, and interpret and translate all the incoming messages from the constituents.
Yeah.
So those staffers are actually important, even though they're not making the actual decisions. So definitely be nice to the staffers.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you are emailing whatever your representative, you're not literally emailing your representative, so it might be nice to interface the person reading the email on that level. Hey, I realize that you're not my representative, so maybe you and I should talk.
You're a representative for my representative.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I've got a final question, if that's all right.
Yeah, do it.
So let's say 2 years from now, 3 years from now, marijuana is legal federally.
Yay!
You've done it. Congratulations.
I got to find a new job. No, I'm just kidding.
But let's say that happens. There's a lot of other substances that are on the rise for a potential for legalization. Among them, mushrooms.
Yeah.
MDMA is getting some serious looks regarding big scientific journals publishing studies saying that they help with really intense, dark stuff.
Yeah, super good for trauma.
Yeah, serious, veteran PTSD trauma, watch their friend die kind. What do you think is first off, do you think there's going to be a gap? Do you think it's going to be marijuana is legal and it's all right, we're going to chill for a little bit on legalizing psychotropic drugs? Or do you think it's going to be an avalanche of legalization?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, my instinct is that the government would try to slow things down. Like they need things happen at a glacial pace at the federal level.
Yes, they do.
They need a lot of time to think about things and adjust. So
congressional warming.
I'm putting that on a shirt. Did you just think of that?
Yeah, Congress moves at a glacial pace. It's time for congressional warning.
Yeah.
We just need some sort of CO2 allegory to that metaphor.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that I think that there will be a massive amount of resistance because, number one, well, maybe not as much as I may be thinking, but, most people know somebody who smoked cannabis, and even, I'm sure, a large percentage of, the legislators, the old boys club who were misgivings and misinformation regarding the subject matter, they probably still knew someone. They'd probably seen marijuana at a party, and I'm sure plenty of them, I know every lawyer you've ever met has done a ton of drugs, and they've also convicted a ton of people for doing a ton of drugs, that's normal. Yeah. But now that we have the young crew coming up, and they don't really want to be that dishonest, I know plenty of lawyers who got out because they were like, I'm tired of convicting people for shit I do every day. But I think that there is a mysticism and a magic and a cloudiness to psychedelics. So I think there will be a lot of resistance there. But to be perfectly honest, I think that government will be illegal before government legalizes most of those substances, honestly. I'm imagining a complete re-envisioning of society before most of that even really becomes an issue.
Because also if psychedelics do become totally legalized in that fashion, then the system won't last long anyhow.
That's true. That would be the second that everyone ran out to try mushrooms. They would be like, "Why do we even have government?
What are we doing? Why don't we just share our things?" And it's hard. Yeah,
that would be can you imagine being on mushrooms for the first time under the auspices of a legal thing? Like it becomes legal. You're like, mushrooms are legal. Maybe I should go try it. And then you try it, and you're like, they made this legal.
Yeah.
Isn't there a movie coming out with Jim Carrey, and he actually...
Nope, that is not the thing. That was so this guy made, it's called True Hallucinations, and he took a bunch of most of the best things that Terrence McKenna ever said, and he stitched them together in a very nice, seamless, documentary style kind of information flow.
Okay.
And then he published a movie poster with Jim Carrey's image on it and made a little promotional page.
Fake news?
Yeah, he totally fake newsed it, and it blew up everywhere. You have no idea how many times I've corrected people on the internet. But he did. He very much I am making this fake meme because I want this to be a real thing. There's no reason it shouldn't be a real thing.
Jim Carrey can't do that, though.
You don't think Jim Carrey can do that?
I heard he went out and did a bunch of mushrooms.
No, Jim Carrey can't do that.
Jim Carrey's a super spiritual dude.
Yeah, he's extra spiritual. I love Jim Carrey. But he can't do that. He's not, because if he wants to retain the iconism that he has to be the affable, loving, very non-threatening weirdo that he is.
Yeah, but that's really is Terrence McKenna. I think it is a good fit. In my mind, it's a good fit. He can play anybody. I'll give him,
You think Jim Carrey could do Terrence McKenna?
Yeah, why not? All you have to do is all you have to do is memorize long, meandering paragraphs and do it in the squeaky Terrence McKenna kind of voice,
He could probably do it. It's not even that I don't think he could do it. I think people forget how much actors and musicians and politicians have PR people behind them the whole time. You shouldn't do that. That's terrible for your career.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. At the core, Terrence McKenna, admittedly, was an agent working for the mushroom. He did such a massive amount of mushrooms.
He became a mushroom.
He became convinced that the mushroom is an intergalactic entity. It is a global mind, a hive mind.
Yeah.
And it essentially promised him, the mushroom was our goal is to explore space and to spread ourselves throughout intergalactic space. And so if you help us spread out, we will give you the information to do that. And he basically was in an argument with the mushrooms. This is that whole thing when he went into the Amazon, Peruvian jungle, was him in an argument with the mushroom being okay, tell me how to build a spaceship. And they're well, we can't yet.
Yeah.
But he admittedly, he's I am an agent of the mushroom. The mushroom.
He's a weirdo. I love him.
In a way, my God. Not he's I am in the church of the mushroom, and I am an acolyte. I fully support what the mushroom has telling me should happen. I think that's he's not saying I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because they convinced me I should.
I think Terrence McKenna just his message isn't dilutable into the public yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that's what I'm saying. Like once you get, it took me, I've followed Terrence McKenna for a long time, and it took me a long time to realize that that's how, when you get really deep in there, he's like, the mushroom is a hive mind, and it has convinced me to support its cause. So that's, that would be a tough sell to anyone's PR campaign.
I think that's going to crush most people's iconism.
Well, as with cannabis, I mean, the best thing we can do is try to normalize and educate. So the studies coming out about mushrooms being great for treating depression and anxiety and PTSD, the more studies of this and the more we talk about it, the closer we can become.
Yeah. And if you want to get into that subject around mushrooms, the best guy there is Terrence's brother, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis McKenna did a bunch of studies.
Yeah, and Terrence was kind of the philosopher, and Dennis was the scientist. And so he can lay out...
They're both fucking weirdos, though.
Yeah, they're total weirdos. And I really need to get to Dennis's book. I'm really excited to read it. But Dennis lays out the biological mechanisms and stuff, the way the chemicals actually interact in your body and what's actually going on and why they're totally amazing. So there are lots of ways to rewire your brain these days. So
also,
if you want to look into the MDMA issue, Google Maps, Boulder is a major maps hub in the country, some of the most best and foremost research, and they have the most amount of success.
And shout out that guy who was on before with the stripper, who's doing the study on MDMA. He's looking for couples who...
Yeah, well, my friend Rob Rob Colbert is doing a study looking for adult couples who experiment with MDMA as a couple.
Yeah, I think there were studies a few decades ago for couples therapy with MDMA as well, and then it, got restricted, and now it's coming back.
You know what's crazy to think is that all of this was legal to do, like, in the 60s.
Ah, totally.
Like, totally legal to just, like, bring people in and get them high on these drugs, and then, like, well, let's see what happens.
Back when a dime bag cost a dime.
Wow. I wanted to snap. But that's crazy to think that it's not been very long. It's only been 50 years since that kind of freedom was allotted to us. We weren't as aware of it. And now that we're aware of it, they're restricting as much as they can.
Well, I'm the conspiratorial mind, so I always go there. But the evidence for me appears that as soon as they figured out how good it was, they locked it up. And now that we are figuring out how good it is, we're dragging it back out into the light. So. But anyway, I like where this discussion went. It went kind of away from marijuana, and that tells us right there that it's already a dead issue. That's why I'm excited for all the legalization and stuff to happen. But here we are, core. We are speaking to the choir, and it's already a part of our mindset. It is a part of our reality. So if you're out there and you don't know anything about weed, don't feel any pressure to do it. It is actually an interesting. We'll end on that point of the dare and some of the misinformation and stuff, and the peer pressure thing was always a really interesting thing in drug culture coming up in schools and stuff. And you get into the weed culture and you find out that actually, no, we're a bunch of nice people, and I've never been forced, weed. I've never seen weed forced on anyone.
Hey, you need to smoke this joint, man.
Yeah.
No, never.
I've only seen one person with like a truly negative
experience.
Yeah, like they got high and they couldn't handle it. So
yeah, I've seen that happen. I mean, but I would also posit the same thing with like mushrooms or any other psychoactive substance, even like coffee. Right? There are people who drink it and they get too much.
Yeah,
every body is different, right?
Very true.
And B, like, nature has this amazing way of removing your inhibitions, and the things you've been stuffing down your whole life are going to come back up. It doesn't mean that something's happening to you. It means that you're finally dealing with some stuff that has been in there for a while. And if you don't deal with it, it turns into cancer. So
that's true. Although scientists might argue.
That's fine.
But not for long.
We'll see.
There's lots of science coming up on that too. I mean, it is hard science.
Stress. The number one fact is that stress causes most really deadly diseases. Absolutely. And if you can relieve that, then
stress is the number one issue by a mile. It is not even close. Of the things, like if you want to do one thing to make your life better, de-stress. And hopefully this is one of the ways you do it, by listening to fun people with interesting, controversial topics.
Yay.
So thanks for Bethany joining us. You can find her online under the moniker Beatnik Betty.
True.
She is also a poet, and she does some very awesome poetic electronic music stuff that I've heard. I'm sure there's quite a bit more out there.
I want to hear.
She has 2 published books now, books of poetry available on Amazon.
What?
Yeah, totally.
I like to stay busy.
The Cicada and the Firefly, if I recall.
Yep, one's called The Cicada and the Firefly, a study of love and insects. The second one is called Weather Magic, a collection of poetry and witchcraft.
I like both of those a lot.
He's practically married to a witch, by the way. So
Awesome. I love it.
right on. And then Ryan Fu, as usual, host of Illuminati, one of our other podcasts here on the We Are Denver podcast network. Catch us out in Denver everywhere. We're on Facebook, We Are Denver, Colorado. Twitter's WeAreDenver.org, WeAreDenver.org. I am you're Illuminati. I'm NothingXplained on Twitter. And of course, we are in the Ghost House. Big shout out to Rich, who's running the control panel, Ghost House Denver CO. And we live on Twitch every Sunday. And then big shout out to Miles, who's over there running the pushing buttons and stuff in the video studio. So. All right.
Couldn't do it without our crew, so thank you so much to the crew.
See you next week. Next week will be my birthday show. Hey, it's 3:33, so here's the synchronicities.
Woo-woo.
See you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Peace out.